Hello, I'm Dr. Angie McCartney.
And I'm Ruth McCartney.
Welcome to TeaFlix,
where each episode's intimate conversation features a fascinating guest across the spectrum of Beatles world, pop culture, Grammy winners, the music industry, chefs, producers, music stars, actors, and more. So bottoms up and join us as they spill the tea on TeaFlix.
And once again, it says we are live.
Oh, good. Jolly good.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, folks.
Checking with Martin in the control room to refresh Facebooky. I think there must be a delay in case we say something nasty.
Who, me?
Never would we say anything nasty. Absolutely. So welcome to TeaFlix today, kids. Hope everybody's dealing with the heat and the weather and the crap all over the world that we're all seem to be dealing with. We are happy to announce this broadcast is sponsored by MrsMcCartney'sTeas.com, as ever. And we sold out in a big hurry of our 20th anniversary new flavor vanilla chai, but it is back in stock as of today. So make sure you hydrate. You can drink this cold too. And we have a new announcement. We have a brand new book out today, in fact, Words of Wisdom, Twisted English and Linguistic Lunacy for Word Nerds. And it's all about palindromes, malapropisms, Wellerisms, contronyms, rhyming slang, portmanteaus, idioms, Tom Swifties, and the rest of it. Speaking of Swiftie, congratulations, Taylor. She just got engaged.
Oh, did she?
Yes, 10 minutes ago.
Oh, good.
So, staying current, today's guest is all the way from England, and we're thrilled that he's made the time for us. He is kindly introduced to us by our buddy John Bazzini, known as Buzz in the Beatle world. And his name is Martin Orkin. He's a writer on the subject of the Beatles and 1960s music. He's a big fan, of course, and he was privileged to see them live in concert December 1964 at the Hammersmith Odeon in London. Martin began listening to pop music at the age of 12 in 1962 when the charts were ruled by the likes of Elvis, Neil Sedaka, Cliff Richard, and the Shadows. Then, of course, the Beatles arrived at the start of 1963 in the UK and turned everything upside down. It was an amazing time for music. Martin then followed the progress of the Beatles and their main competitors, such as the Rolling Stones and the Beach Boys, throughout the 1960s and beyond, and he followed them very closely, which turned into something fabulous. During the late 60s and into the 70s, Martin aimed at a career in songwriting himself, and he got close to success with his song Nancy, which was released by a London group called Three's Company in 1968, and which was published by the Beatles publishing company Apple, and Martin still has the cheque signed by George Harrison and the contract signed by Neil Aspinall. So that's a huge piece of history right there.
Yeah.
After retiring from a successful career in banking and finance, we need you, Martin. In 2010, he returned to his first love. In April 21, he published his first book, Rivals of the Beatles, where he discussed 20 of the bands who competed with them during the 60s, such as the aforementioned Stones, the Beach Boys, the Dave Clark Five, and the Monkees. As well as telling their stories and analyzing their records, Martin has also explained the influence that the Beatles had on each of them. So those are great in-depth books. In December of 2023, Martin published his second book, Rivals of the Beatles 2, in which he covered 10 more groups, including the Animals, Simon and Garfunkel, The Who, and even Queen. During the past few years, Martin has given many talks on 60s music to live audiences ranging from as little as 50 to well above 300 people. His talks on the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Queen have proved especially popular. Also, he does a seasonal Christmas talk, which could be fun.
Yeah.
He's also had articles published in UK music magazine Shindig and the Liverpool Echo, and he has presented on several music shows with host Trevor Richards on the internet radio station AJK Radio. Today, we'll also talk about his two new books, which are coming out very soon, the Beatles hit singles parts 1 and 2, which examine in depth each of the Beatles singles in the order they came out in both Britain and America, which always fascinates me why they switched that round. Maybe Martin knows. From My Bonnie and Love Me Do through to Let It Be in the Long and Winding Road. So without further ado, all the way from Blighty, please welcome the very talented writer, Martin Orkin. Great to have you, Martin.
Hello, Martin.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure and a privilege. And I must say, having seen a few of your podcasts with some very illustrious guests you've had recently, I feel very honored to be in amongst such company.
Oh,
not at
you're
all.
Most welcome.
I think, John Bazzini, Buzz Bazzini is a great arbiter of good things, and he always sends great people our way. We had John Creamer on recently as well, and Buzz does a great job. He's very picky with whom he recommends. So whenever he says, "Hey, have you seen these books and met this author?" we're always fascinated, because it's always a great talk and a great time.
I would like to add that John Bazzini has been a great friend of mine since I wrote my first book. And in fact, at the time, he was running, a big group site for Beatles fans. And through his efforts, I was selling at one point nearly as many copies of my first book to American buyers as I was to UK buyers, even though the postage was way, way more. It was doubling the cost of the book. So I've got a lot to thank John for. So if you're watching, John, I really appreciate all your support.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do too.
We do too. Before we get into all your history and your books, I learned something very interesting this week. I'm negotiating with a couple of publishers for my next tome. And one lady in Holland in particular said that if you get an ISBN number for your book, which is the International Standard Book Number, it's like it's not a barcode, but it's like if you get that in the UK on First Publishing, you are bound by UK law to give away a free copy to any library or school who requests the book. Oops. But if you have a US ISBN number, you don't. Isn't that fascinating?
It's well worth knowing. Yeah.
It is.
My actual understanding of that is if you write a book and put it out at all, then you must by law give a copy to the British Library, whether they ask for it or not. Then there's another group of libraries, 5 of them, and if their holding company gets in contact with you and asks, then you must send them another 5 copies. But that's where it ends.
Okay.
So in fact, my first book, when it first came out, it didn't have an ISBN number, so I just had to send one to the British Library. But my books since then have had the ISBN number. This is the back of my new book. You can see the coding on there. This is not out yet, and that will mean I'll have to give away 6 copies.
So as long as it's limited to only 6, that's not bad. I thought when she was emailing me that you had to give one to every library in Britain. I'm like, oh my God, you'd go bankrupt.
Wipe you out, wouldn't it?
My God.
It would exhaust my entire print run.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And we exhaust the lady at the post office too.
Indeed.
So let's wind back to the beginning.
Yeah. So what first inspired you to write Rivals of the Beatles? Was it a lifelong fascination with the music of that period, or something that developed later?
Well, it was lifelong fascination with the music. It was in August 1962, and I can remember exactly because I can remember what the chart was at the time. My parents had gone out. I was listening to a program called Pick of the Pops with Alan Freeman. Do you remember that?
Alan Freeman.
And I just started listening to it because I was at a bit of a loose end, and he was playing through the top 10 as he always did, and I thought to myself, my God, that record's brilliant. And then the next one seemed to be even more brilliant, and by the time I got up to the number 1, I was absolutely sold. And after that, I really started. So it was when I really started following pop music, and that was in August 1962. Well, I quickly discovered, of course, that Elvis was the king then. Nobody could touch him. The biggest British star by far was Cliff Richard, who with his group The Shadows, seemed to have all bases covered. And as I got into it, it seemed to me as though Cliff had it all sewn up and he was going to be top dog in Britain forever, that nobody was ever going to touch him. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, come 1963, which was when I discovered the Beatles, because I didn't really notice them when Love Me Do came out in the first place. But when I heard Please Please Me, it knocked me sideways. And I thought, my God, what's happening now? And it was from that I saw the seismic changes happening in front of me, and to me, it was such a wonderful time to be growing up, because you saw all this wonderful explosion of music and ideas and culture and clothes and everything, and it all stemmed from the Beatles, who just changed everything round about them.
Right. I mean, speaking of pop culture, the Beatles were sort of the, stick a pin in it for the 60s of the time. Back many moons earlier, many centuries earlier, Shakespeare was kind of the dude of the day, right? And got people interested in literature and little people printing books and, writing them out and so on. Now, you have somewhat of an academic, or you're a fan of Shakespeare too, aren't you?
Oh, no, I'm afraid I'm not really. No. I find him, he sends me to sleep. I can't cope with listening to stuff that I can't really understand.
Okay.
No, I know what you mean.
The language is all so old-fashioned. He was a brilliant playwright, but I'm afraid I was a terrible disappointment to my parents, especially to my father, who always was trying to get me to move on from pop music and to get into the real stuff, which was classical music, which was what he adored. And he said, "This pop music, it's here today, it's gone tomorrow." And when started off, yes, pop was very disposable. I'd buy the latest hit, and then 2 months later, nobody ever wanted to hear it again.
Yeah.
But that was another thing that the Beatles completely changed. So I'm afraid I'm a simple person. And I said to my dad, I'm sorry, I'm a rock and roller at heart. And you'll have to just put up with it. For
some reason in my research, I thought I had read somewhere that you'd been forced to study Shakespeare in school. And that's when
no doubt. We all were, yes. But no, Shakespeare is not my strong point, I'm afraid. I've been to see a few Shakespeare plays over the years, and I had to study Macbeth at school and things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not really my scene, no.
No, it's not. It's never been my scene either.
Me too.
Back when hip hop and rap started rearing its head, and Grandmaster Flash was, hip to the hop, to the hippity hop, to the whatever year that was, probably 82, 3, something in that. I had the crazy idea of trying to set Othello to hip hop music to get the young people involved, and nobody would listen to me. And of course, now you've got Hamilton on Broadway, right? Popular music, and a president and a mixed cast and whatever. But Shakespeare always put me to sleep too, because it was just like, you are. It sounded like they were speaking through some kind of a cheesecloth or something. That's crazy. So Ange had another question about research.
Yeah, okay. I've got some notes here. So when you were researching the rivals of the Beatles, which band or artist most surprised you in terms of their success or their influence?
Which most surprised me?
Yes.
Or was there a band that when you were researching them, you thought they should have been bigger than they ever were?
Well,
I've got one, but you go first.
Well, in my book, there are any number of, quite a number of groups who should have done better than what they did.
Yeah.
One was Twice as Much, which was a duo that I was talking about to Angie before we came on air, who were a UK duo who were signed to Andrew Oldham's Immediate record label.
Well,
and they had a small hit with a cover of a Rolling Stones song written by Jagger and Richards, which they had not yet put out themselves, called Sitting on a Fence.
Oh.
Which was a modest hit in Britain.
Yeah.
And then they started putting out their own material, which was just as good, but the hits stopped. And then in November 1966, they put an album out called Own Up. And to this day, this is one of my favorite LPs of all time. And I came across it because of a review in Record Mirror, which went on and on about how brilliant it was. I thought I've got to buy this record to check it out. And it lived up to everything that the reviewer had said. So I was able to talk to these guys and to find out the backstory.
What was the name of the duo?
Twice as Much.
Twice as Much.
Twice as Much. And you can Google and you can find their stuff on
YouTube.
I will, because a good song is a good song is a good song. You know, a well-constructed pop song lasts forever.
Yeah.
Well, you would think so. And on their album, they did. It was half cover versions, half their own original songs, and their own originals are great. But you know the song "Sha-la-la-la-lee" by the Small Faces?
Oh yes.
Way off track. Their version, which was only a few months after the Small Faces put it out, their version was completely different, and it was absolutely stupendous. I said to them, you should have put that out as a single, because it was a hit written all over it. But nobody ever thought of it. Of course, the media was very chaotic. So that was one duo that I felt deserved far, far more success than what they actually had.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of bands, one English, one American, that I think should have been, I mean, they're huge, don't get me wrong. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of both of them and worked for one of them. But I can't believe they got to the level that they got. And then it might have been politics, it might have been management or label or what have you. The first one is The Who. I don't know why The Who aren't as big as the Stones or the Beatles. Just amazing. And in this country, even though they went over to Abbey Road and were produced by George Martin, Jerry Beckley and Dewey Bunnell, who formed America, another one of my favorite bands that we built their very first website, VenturaHighway.com. I still don't understand why America aren't on a par with the Eagles. It's just so weird, isn't it, how it happens?
Indeed. And another group that deserved more success, more long-term success, was the Kinks. Now,
Again? Yes. Yeah.
They had an incredible run of singles in the 60s, classic after classic. And then in the 70s, when everything went more album-oriented, they were putting LPs out, but they weren't selling in the way that their singles had done and their early material. And they gradually went off and off and off. Later on, in the late 70s and into the 80s, they signed with Arista.
Right.
Record.
Clive Davis. Sure.
And all the adventurism, which I personally was not very keen on, that they'd gone in for, went out the window, and it was back to straight rock and roll songs in the way that the Kinks could do wonderful justice to them. And then they had a resurgence of a career in the 80s. So you know, but there's any manner of groups and any manner of stories. I mean, in Rivals too, I talk about the Animals.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody knows Eric Burdon and The House of the Rising Sun, which was the hit beyond all hits. And yet the group themselves were cheated out of all the money from it.
Oh,
it happens so often. You hear it, you know. I mean, there is one very famous artist, now not with us any longer, and his lawyer missed one word in a 200-page contract, and he wound up losing his home. And, you know, I mean, he's still okay, but the difference in recoupable against royalties and the word recoverable from assets, that was what this lawyer missed. And so this artist was allowed to make a record and run up a bill of $2 million in the studio, because knowing the record label knowing that they weren't going to put any marketing dollars behind it. They made one lousy video, one or two, and then they called in the debt for all of the I mean, he had 8 studios and engineers on hold 24/7 at $180 an hour for 3 years.
Years ago,
that bill runs up real quick.
Yeah.
And so what they wound up doing was saying, oh, well, we'll take your house and or we'll take your publishing royalties. And he had to give him all of his publishing royalties, including other artists that he had bought. And that was one little word in a contract. And so often, you know, you hear these horror stories with these bands. And now they're buying back their catalog. They bought back their catalogs, re-recorded them, and then they're selling them to like Hypnosis and people like that. But the music business, it's so complicated. People don't really reckon with that, I think. A lot of times, like America and The Who, my examples, it could have been bad marketing. It could have been a bad contract. It could have been a dodgy manager. It could have been a business manager that just didn't know what they were doing. There's so many pitfalls, aren't there?
Absolutely. But in the case of The Who, and I was a big fan of The Who, for me, one of the problems was as the years went by, the songwriting wasn't as good anymore.
Right.
And to me, that was the real problem. In the early days, Pete Townshend was able to crank out all these classics like My Generation, which was not a major hit in America. I don't know why it wasn't. It was a cataclysmic record. And I Can't Explain, and Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere, and then Happy Jack, and all those other ones after that. And then he hit the jackpot with Tommy and Quadrophenia.
Right.
The later albums, as I say in my chapter, my chapter on The Who, in Rivals 2, the later albums have less and less of interest for me, and the quality just wasn't there. So I think that might have been part of the problem. But in terms of the contracts, of course, there was a classic situation which involved the Beatles and a contract. And what it was, and to me, this is one of the fascinating things about this book, The Beatles Hit Singles, of it, I'm writing. And as I've been working away at it and researching and checking on things, I've been stumbling across stuff that I was only dimly aware of, if at all, before. And it was one thing I could never work out why, when they were signed to Capitol Records eventually,
right,
in America, not at the beginning, but
it was VJ first, right? I think
it was VJ first,
right.
And the reason for that was that Capitol turned them down. They rejected.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Yes, because what actually happened, if you allow me to digress a little bit, was that they were signed to Parlophone in England.
Yeah.
And Parlophone was part of the EMI group of record labels. It was part of EMI's group of record labels. They were already been turned down by Columbia and HMV, which were EMI's bigger labels. They'd been turned down by them. Parlophone was like almost a last-ditch saloon for them.
Right.
They're signed there. Once they started having hits, then the natural place for them to go was Capitol Records, one of the biggest record companies in America. And the reason for that was that at the time, EMI owned them.
Yes.
They owned them. So you would have thought that they could have said to Capitol, "You're going to put the Beatles records out because they're having big hits over here, and we want to replicate the success in America." But
right.
Capitol were able to act autonomously, and they said no.
Oh.
They said, "We don't like the Beatles. We don't think they sing very well.
Way to go to lose your job, dude."
We don't think they sing well. We don't think they play their instruments. Their records are poor. We don't like their songs. They need a good haircut."
Oh, they had one.
Yeah. And most damningly of all, we don't think they have any commercial potential in America.
Sorry,
who's on first?
I'm gonna yak at my breakfast. Oh my God.
So they rejected them. So the only way of getting the Beatles' early hits, like Please Please Me and From Me to You, out at all, nobody wanted Love Me Do, by the way. That was never at the time.
Interesting.
Nobody would take it, right? But it went to a smaller label called VJ, and there's a story which relates to that, which would be me digressing again.
That's okay.
They'd come to a guy called the guy who owned Ode Records. Oh my God, I've forgotten his name now. It'll come back to me. But anyway, this guy who it came up in P.F. Sloan's autobiography. The name will come back to me. I don't know why I've lost it, but I'm getting old. That's the trouble. So anyway, this guy said to P.F. Sloan when one day a package arrived with several of the Beatles' recent singles saying, "Give this a chance, listen to it," and he thought it was absolutely brilliant. So he went to his boss, and his boss said, "What are you thinking about? They come from England. It's all a load of rubbish over there. Put it in the bin." So it was only then when he said, "Well, I'll trade you a month's salary for the rights to these demos." He had another listen to them.
Wow.
Then he had another listen to them, and then he said, "This is the guy that produced Carole King's mega-selling Tapestry album."
Wow.
I'm trying to remember his name. It's just escaped me.
I'll ask Siri.
Dear.
Siri, who produced Carole King's Tapestry? There you go. That's digital intervention right there.
Well, he owned the record label it was on.
Lou Adler.
Lou Adler.
Yeah.
Thank you, Siri.
Yeah. So then it looked as though Lou Adler was going to be saddled with the Beatles, but himself, he didn't think they were good either. So he persuaded a guy in VJ Records that he knew to take them on. He said, "My schedules are all full at the moment, but these guys are going to do really well. Can you take them on?" Because he wanted them off his hands. Right? So the first two singles went to VJ Records. But then after those first two singles bombed, when the next one came out, which happened to be She Loves You,
yep,
VJ said no to it themselves. They didn't want to have another flop with this no hoper group from England. So it went to an even smaller label. I just got a picture here. I was going to show you something else, but
Yeah.
if you just, can you see this at all?
Yeah, pull it over a little bit to your left.
Your
left, other way, other left, that one.
Can you see
Yes.
where my finger is?
Yep. Yeah,
You
yeah,
see
yeah.
the word Swan.
Yes, Swan Records, that's right.
Oh, gosh.
I'd forgotten about that, Martin.
So She Loved You came out on Swan, where it died.
The Dying
So
Swan.
here you had EMI in Britain. They had two completely different viewpoints at the present time. One, how thrilled we are that the Beatles are making so much more money for us in Britain.
Right.
But we're absolutely devastated and totally sad over the fact that we can't break them in America. Because if we could only do that, imagine how much more money we could make in the biggest record market in the world. So that was when for the next single.
Would this have been 63 prior to Ed Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay,
This
makes
was
sense.
Towards the end of 63, when the Beatles were about to release I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Got it.
And
Yeah,
I Want to Hold Your Hand was put out, and of course it became a monster hit. and Capitol were dragged kicking and screaming to sign the Beatles.
Wow.
And they were doing it mainly because they didn't think anything would come of it. They were doing it mainly to get EMI off their backs.
Yeah.
And then after that, they could say, we told you they were a bunch of losers, right? Don't bother us anymore. We know what's best over here.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, this comes to the point, the whole point, which for once I've actually remembered what the point of it was.
Good going.
When they drew up the contracts for the Beatles, Capitol Records never put anything in about records emanating from movies.
Oh.
Right?
Interesting.
Because they never thought for one moment that the Beatles would ever be in a position of making a movie.
Duh. Yeah.
Wrong.
So when United Artists got the rights to A Hard Day's Night, they also got the rights to the soundtrack album. And all that Capitol could get off it was singles. So they released virtually all the tracks as singles, but they couldn't release the album because of that goof in
The contract.
So I said in my in the book, I reckon that half of the legal team in Capitol Records got fired when they found that out.
Wow, they probably made him rappel off the side of the building to go. Well, you see, for me anyway, we're breaking news and spilling tea here on TeaFlix because I did not know.
Yeah.
I've never really done a deep dive into the contracts because a lot of my life is living in that world anyway with digital and crypto and all of that web stuff. That is absolutely fascinating. So they omitted the rights for movie soundtracks. Well, yeah, I mean, in 1963, who would have thought the Beatles would actually be movie stars at any point? You wouldn't even, do the maths on that, would you?
Well, in Britain, you could see it coming.
Yeah.
By the time I Want to Hold Your Hand came out, She Loves You had sold the better part of 2 million copies in Britain.
In Britain,
there was no precedent.
No.
She Loves You went to number one in Britain about August 1963. It remained in the top three through to December 1963.
Right.
And when I Want to Hold Your Hand came out in December, because they couldn't hold back their next single forever,
Right.
it displaced She Loves You at number one.
Yeah. Well, and you think about
never anything like it.
To the population of Britain in those days, it was probably 23 to 25 to 30 million in the 60s, right? It's, it's what is it now, 65, 70 million or something. But if you think they sold 2 million records, that's like 1 in every 11 or 12 people owned a Beatle record. That's staggering.
It is. And records were not cheap here.
No, they weren't. Absolutely.
A single was 6 shillings and 8p. I could remember clearly.
And 8p.
A lot of pocket money to buy a single.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Was out of reach in those
You
days.
had to deliver a lot of newspapers to get an LP. Oh my God.
Oh God, yes.
If there are any millennials watching this eventually, LP means long play because it's more than one.
It's an album.
It's an album. LP stands for long play.
Indeed.
And how many grooves are there on a vinyl record? 2, A-side, B-side.
Indeed.
There you go. Yeah, our regular viewers will know when I was signed to BMG through Jupiter Records in Germany, my album at that time was the last pressed in vinyl to come off in Gütersloh, and I drove up to Gütersloh in Germany. I was living in Munich to see it come off the press and them actually making the vinyl and the cover and the sealing and all of that stuff. It's quite the process. When you think about vinyl records and how we progressed from Bakelite and the breakables to vinyl back in the day, that was quite a technological leap for 60, 70 years ago, wasn't it?
Oh, phenomenal. And the sound quality, of course. My parents were listening to 78s.
Yes.
And they were scratchy and thin. The sound was nothing like the same. Yeah. And there are people to this day who say that the best sound that you could possibly get still is proper vinyl on a good system.
180
reasonable record player and a valve amplifier system. Nice. And when I play music on that, it feels like it comes alive in a way that even the best processed sound can't quite match.
Well, you feel the texture, don't you? You feel that it's like if you go to the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, or you go to one of these old, the First AME church here, it's almost like the wood has absorbed all the music and it's reverberating some of it back. You can feel the texture. But now they want us to live with these crappy little white plastic earphones in and listen to digital. I won't do it. I
can't cope with things in my ears. I wear ear pads.
Yeah. Headphones are okay if you're listening to vinyl, but these MP3 players and play it off your phone now. I mean, even iPods have gone away, and they want you to play it off a phone. Oh, I'm just a cranky old white lady. What can I tell you?
No. I'm entirely with you. I think iPods are fantastic.
They were great.
My music talks, I create playlists.
Yeah.
And I play snippets of each of the records I'm playing through my PA system, and it all comes from this. And they're marvelous.
They are. If you've got one that'll still boot up and take a charge, it's we've got a whole collection of them. We've got Blackberries and all my old flip phones and Samsungs and everything. I'll have to open like a techno retro cafe, a tea shop. There you go. We haven't got quite enough to do. Let's open a tea shop.
Yeah. But going
back to all those great 60s bands and everything that you researched, and the 2 Rivals books.
So how did you decide which Rivals made the cut for your books? And were there any that you reluctantly had to leave out?
Well, there were loads that I reluctantly had to leave out. I've got this huge, long list that I had to choose from, Originally, when I started, I thought, well, who am I going to put in? And I thought, well, I've got to put in the Rolling Stones for obvious reasons, because they followed the Beatles and copied a lot of what they did, and turned it into their own format. But they were heavily influenced. And of course, they got the first major hit from a song that John Lennon and Paul McCartney gave to them, effectively, with I Want to Be Your Man. So the Rolling Stones had to be in. The Beach Boys was a terrific tussle in the 60s between Brian Wilson, because, of course, when the Beatles were signed to Capitol Records, finally, that caused real problems for the Beach Boys because they were on Capitol Records.
And they were locals too. They were right down the street here in Hawthorne. They used to show up at Capitol Records and try and have argy-bargy, like, why aren't we getting the promo?
Did they?
Oh, yeah.
Not at all surprised, because not only all of a sudden they were no longer the number one group in America, they weren't even the number one group on their own record label, which was a horrendous situation to be in. So I had to have them in, and I thought, we've got to have the Dave Clark Five, got to have the Byrds, because the Byrds effectively stemmed from the Beatles via A Hard Day's Night. Yeah. And then I've got to have the Monkees, because the Monkees were the American...
manufactured Beatles.
The manufactured Beatles. Yeah. And then I thought, well, there are going to be people who say, "Oh, you picked all the obvious choices. You've picked all them. You picked Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas because Billy J. Kramer was a beneficiary of several fabulous Beatles songs, which gave him his first few hits and made a star out of him."
Okay.
So I've got to put in a few people and then try and justify them that nobody would expect to see in a book called The Rivals of the Beatles. So I put in a group called the Mothers of Invention.
Oh, I
yeah.
remember them. Sure.
Yeah. I'm in. And I've got a wonderful friend in America called Pete, who I'm related to through my daughter's marriage. Lovely guy and a very great friend of mine. And I remember right at the very beginning when I was started chatting to him, because he's a drummer and he as well as all the other things that he can do.
But he can't help it. We always say when somebody says he's a drummer, but he can't help it.
Can't help it.
Well, I wouldn't dare say that, but absolutely, he makes enough jokes about himself on that. But he expressed an interest, or I asked him if he'd be interested in having a look at one of my chapters in this book I was writing at the time. So I gave him a list of these names, and I said, "Which one would you like?" And he said, "Oh, I'll pick the Mothers of Invention." And I thought, out of all of you, you've picked that one. So that always resonated with me, So
Yeah.
So that was one group that nobody would have expected to see, and I put in the Grateful Dead, which nobody would have expected to see, and I put in the Grassroots. So I tried to mix it up a bit and
Good idea.
justify through the course of my writing, and it's up to the reader whether they felt I succeeded or not.
Can you hold up the whichever book you have there? Do you only have the new one, or do you have a Rivals cover so our people know what they're looking for when they shop online to get your book? So there's two versions: Rivals of the Beatles, #1, and Volume 1 and Volume 2.
This is 800 pages, by the way.
Oh my Lord!
Wow.
No half measures in your house.
20 of the groups of the era. It weighs an absolute ton, and the reason for that was going back to, I think it was Angie's question. Was there anybody I felt I had to leave out? Yes, but I crammed in as many as I could, thinking it would be the only book I would ever write.
Yeah.
But then I couldn't stop. So some of the ones that I failed to make the cut came into
The next book.
Rivals of the Beatles too.
Yep. There you go.
Both hardback, glossy.
Oh my God. It's a
Beautiful books.
Sewn in pages. The pages will never come out, right? The pages are sewn in, not glued.
Yep, gorgeous.
Because if I wanted to put my name to it, I wanted to be. I'm not doing it for the money. I don't need the money.
Right.
I could always do with the money, but I don't need the money. But the point
So did you rob the bank before you left?
Well, I kept it small. I self-published. I kept my costs as low as I could, and I priced the books as low as I possibly could. So, Rivals of the Beatles 1, if anybody's interested, it's available on Amazon via my kind friend Roger Willems, who came across this book in a cafe, got hold of my phone number, rang me, and bought all my remaining copies, which
Oh my goodness.
75 at the time, and then ordered a big reprint, which he's put out on Amazon in Britain and America. So if anybody's interested, that's available, and obviously I recommend it.
Yes.
This one, I'm down to my last 50 or so copies, and that will go out quite soon, and then we'll see what happens. But I'll be on to my next book by then.
Well, I know you're writing, before we get to that, you're writing the singles and all of the history and some of the stories we told today next. But have you ever thought of going back to writing the Rivals in a different format, like influenced by the Beatles and the bands of the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s? I mean, there would be no Oasis if there were no Beatles.
No,
No,
I wouldn't do that.
Not an era that interests you?
Because it's not where my heart lies.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know what you mean.
I'm a kid of the 60s.
Yeah.
And as the years went by after that, then I found that my interest in the music of the era was starting to go down. Wow. So, I mean, the 60s was my era. I loved a lot of 70s stuff. I mean, one of your people that you interviewed recently, he was talking about a friend of his called Al Stewart.
Yes.
Something my wife and I followed through the 60s and all the way through after that. So people like that, and Jerry Rafferty, we followed, and there are others besides as well. Kenny Rogers, for example. But once you got to the 80s and the 90s, then my interest is going right down. And anything since 2000, I don't want to know. I live in the 1960s now.
Yeah, well, you know what?
I know what you
there's
mean.
nothing wrong with that either. There are a few songs that have smacked me in the face in the last 20 years, and a couple of artists. One incredible artist in Canada, Jonas Tumulty, Jonas and the Jaguar Moon, and the next big thing out of Nashville, nickblackmusic.com. And of course, my husband, Martin, who has his Geist, G-E-I-S-T, music with a K.com. His project might interest you. It's because he's 64 years old. So we're all raised on the same kind of music. It's a triptych or a trilogy. It's like Harry Potter for rock and roll, Harry Potter for grown-ups. It's the story. I'll send you the link, geistmusic.com.
Yeah, do that.
And he's created all of the videos. He's played almost all of the instruments. He's written all of the music and 90% of the lyrics. And he is the singer and producer and creates videos and all of that stuff. So we don't actually know what to call it. We're thinking of calling it immersive entertainment because it belongs in the sphere in Vegas. But he has gone back to that credo of late 60s, early 70s music that is real music with real lyrics, stories, and a storyline. And that's what I miss about today's music.
The lyrics.
Having been a lyricist, it's just a lot of the same, isn't it?
A lot of the same. And from time to time, members of the family who come to me and say, well, not recently, because to me it all seems like totally manufactured now, but they would say, well, what about this? And I think to myself, well, it's okay, but it reminds me of so-and-so who did it so much better 30 years before, But when we talk about the 70s, actually, in my first book, because it was all supposed to be rivals of the Beatles. In other words, groups that were trying to compete with the Beatles at the time that the Beatles were still in existence. I pushed the boat out with rivals too, with two or three bands like Queen, for example.
Yeah.
Who they only really started just as the Beatles stopped. But there's one group whom I absolutely loved, I mentioned in here, who are not very well known, and that is Klaatu.
Klaatu, yes. Sure. I know.
Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, which is their famous song. But their first three albums, absolute works of art. And so I wrote a chapter about them. And you say, well, what have they got to do with the Beatles? Because when the first LP came out, and the second one as well, actually, didn't have any credits at all. Everything was just by Klaatu. So it was all a big mystery. They said they didn't want to draw attention to themselves. They wanted the music to speak for itself.
Smart.
Which was fair enough, but the first album particularly became a big success because people thought the Beatles had come back in disguise.
There was a huge rumor that it's the Beatles just off label and no credits and all of that. Did we ever discover who Klaatu really are?
Oh yes, absolutely. There were three Canadian musicians, one of whom passed away, Terry Draper, a little while ago. John Wolochuk and Dee Long were the three of them.
Blame Canada in the woods of South Park.
Oh no! I'm grateful to Canada. I'm grateful to Canada because I thought the records were fabulous.
It's a famous. I was making a joke. It's a famous Oscar-winning song from the South Park movie, the cartoon series called South Park, and they're just a bunch of cartoon kids in Colorado, and they never grew up. They're always 8 years old, and everything's everybody else's fault. It's the blame game culture that we live in today. It's not you're not clumsy. It was the damn chair's fault that you stubbed your toe. That whole helicopter parenting thing. But that's absolute. Yeah, no, I never really realized that Klaatu was unveiled and we figured out who they were. But so, all right, so you're not going to do any more rivals or influenced by. Ange had a question about your next project, which is coming out.
Yeah, your next project, it examines every Beatles single in detail, doesn't it? So what new insights do you hope readers will gain that previous Beatle books might have missed?
Well, that was the thought that I had right at the very beginning. The challenge I set myself was to be able to say something that that would not just simply be regurgitating what's gone before. And there have been thousands, literally thousands of books published about the Beatles. I know I've got a fair few of them myself.
Yeah.
But although nearly all those books refer to or discuss the Beatles singles to some extent, I've never come across a book that goes into them in the forensic detail of what I have. So, for example, I say who wrote the songs. Now, you might say that's easy. It was Lennon and McCartney.
Not always.
No, it's not that easy, because it depends who was the really influential person in the particular song. And you may say, well, does that really matter? Well, it does, because it mattered to John and Paul.
Right.
They had all this unbelievable success, all this money pouring in, but it wasn't enough. Each of them wanted to be the person in the solo spotlight when they're performing their latest single.
Right.
You know?
The rivalry, absolutely, was always there.
Real rivalry between the two of them.
Yeah.
And it started, I think, probably with Can't Buy Me Love, which was a Paul song.
Mm-hmm.
Before then, most of the songs that they wrote in the singles were kind of hybrids. You know, they worked on them together. Eyeball to eyeball was the phrase that they used to use, like and he did that for I Want to Hold Your Hand. I think they did it for She Loves You as well. Really composite, joint, unified songwriting partnership efforts. But Paul did Can't Buy Me Love, and John didn't really like that, because up to then he'd been the sort of de facto unspoken leader of the group. The group as a whole was supposed to be 4 equal individuals, but some were more equal than others. And John regarded himself as effectively.
I like that. Some were more equal than others.
Yeah, it's great.
So after that, he wrote the next series of singles. I made some notes about all this, because otherwise I thought I'll never remember the time. He wrote A Hard Day's Night.
Huh.
As soon as it was decided, because of a phrase that Ringo Starr uttered, he came out of the studio saying, God, that's been a hard day. And then he realized, night had fallen. So he added on the word night at the end. And Dick Lester, who was the director of the film, thought, what a great title for a movie. So as soon as it decided that that's what the film was going to be called, John Lennon rushed home and wrote the song before Paul could rush home and write the song himself.
Not being competitive at all, no.
No. And the very next day, he came in with a completed song and said, here it is.
Beat you to it, pipped you to the post, mate.
And he did it with help as well, by the way.
Did he really?
Yes, he did.
Interesting.
And in the meantime, he wrote I Feel Fine. He wrote I Feel Fine at least partly because he was afraid that the Beatles were going to pick 8 Days a Week as the next single, which was a Paul song.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are obviously the famous ones like John's is Norwegian Wood and Paul's is Yesterday. So what you're saying is you've actually gone into where they were at the time, who said what, who really was the writer credit. The originator, even though they had a 50-50 handshake from the credits and publishing. Not all of them were eyeball to eyeball songs, were they?
Not at all. And in fact, as I go forward to the very end of here it is, part 1, Beatlemania.
Yep, I can see it.
Can't get the angle right.
The angle of the dangle is perfect.
Right. Okay. That's just a mock-up of the cover, a proof of the cover. Then the last single that I cover in the first part, which is 1962 to 1965, is Day Tripper and We Can Work It Out. Now, Day Tripper was a John song, and We Can Work It Out was a Paul song. When they needed a new single, John thought, well, I'd better write it. So he wrote Day Tripper, and he was very pleased with it. When they did it in the studio, he thought, that's it, shoe in for the next single. Then, all of a sudden, Paul pops up with a song, which obviously John thought that'll make a good B-side, We Can Work It Out. And when they did that, then in the inner circle, some of them were saying, you know, I'm not sure that We Can Work It Out isn't going to be a better bet even than Day Tripper, great though it is. And John said, no, Day Tripper's got to be the A side, you know, but you could sense that the mood was going against him.
Yeah.
So in the end, to keep everybody happy, they made it a double A side.
Double A.
Yeah. They shared the credit. But that was the point where Paul came up to John in the power struggle in the group. And then after that, in book 2, as we go into Paperback Writer and Hey Jude and Get Back, the more and more it's Paul that's directing it all and pushing the group. And John is becoming more and more laid back and, whatever, man, you know?
Yeah,
so there's a real change of power in the group at that point in time. And I find that all fascinating. So I write about it. So that's, to me, an example of insights that you would not normally find. But I've gone into so much detail. I mean, my chapters on each of these songs is like 12, 15, 20 pages.
Good grief.
Oh.
Well, these are must-haves. I mean, you can obviously, it's going to be coming out shortly. But Ange had, before we wrap up, Ange had a question about looking ahead.
Yeah, looking ahead, what do you hope your body of Beatles work contributes to the ongoing global conversation about their music and their cultural legacy?
Oh my goodness me, Angie!
She's only short, but she's deep.
Oh God, absolutely. Well, let me put it this way: I write when I write a book, I'm hoping that people who buy it will enjoy it. That's the only thing that matters to me. I hope that they will enjoy it, and if they do so, nothing thrills me more than when they write to me and they tell me that they have done. So I'm not expecting to change the world or have cultural shifts or anything like that, but I'm trying to throw some insight, and I put all my own views into this as well, some of which I hope people will find of interest, entertaining, yet insightful. But I try and put in my own views about the songs and the things that happened. But beyond that, it's really a question for my readers. I just do the very best I can to provide something that has loads of facts in it, but I try and tell it in an entertaining style.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's wonderful.
As you seem to do, it is wonderful.
Yeah.
If anyone would like to know any more about the Beatles hit singles, which are the 2 books coming soon, and Martin's other music-related books, he has a dedicated website, which has been scrolling across the bottom for the last 45 minutes. It's rivalsofthebeatles.com. Yeah. And he also has a business email, and he tries to personally answer every email, but give him time. His email is enquiries, the British way, not inquiry like a death, but enquiries with an E at rivalsofthebeatles.com. And that will go into his assistant's general mailbox, and they will try and get back to you if you have any specific, if you want to buy 50 copies or 100 copies for gifts or corporate gifts. They would make a great thing, a great corporate gift. Or great, family reunions and things like that. These are the kind of books that you're just not going to find, anywhere on a shelf in a library. So I cannot thank you enough for spending not only the time on researching and writing and putting out and spending your own money to put out these books, but finding the time, because I know you're in the middle of the flurry of getting 2 new books out. And you carved out the time for our tech tests and our broadcast today. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. Can I just say that for the time being, the only place that you can buy my book is from me via my website, rivalsofthebeatles.com. This book won't be on Amazon.
No.
It's listed on Amazon, but only because of the ISBN number, which I've had done. It's listed, but it's not for sale. It won't be for sale. This book, I bought less than 1,000 copies, quite honestly, up front, because I just don't know how many I sell.
You can always
it's not how many I sell; it's how many satisfied readers that I have. Is what really matters to me. So give it my best shot, and I hope that people will like it.
Absolutely.
Great, wonderful.
It's absolutely. Yeah. So Robbie is saying, looking to read your book. So I hope we answered your question there, Robbie. It's rivalsofthebeatles.com. Thank you, Albert from Illinois. I know I keep saying Chicago, but you're not in Chicago, but we met you near Chicago. So, but yes, Robbie I'm looking forward to reading your books too. So I'm going to order them. We have to figure out this whole postage thing at the moment with the UK not being able to send packages or business packages to the US. But if you send it as a personal package, I guess that will all. Brendan is over in Ireland. Thank you for tuning in, Brendan. Sammy is all the way down in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for tuning in. And
I recognize some of these names. These are regular.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We have our family.
Program.
We have our family, and then they share it. And we put it on YouTube, and then people share it there. And hopefully it'll reach a large audience, because you have dedicated many, many hours of your life to this passion. I can tell it's a passion, because you're a true artist. You don't care about the money, and you just really want to inform.
I'll show you something before we finish. I nearly forgot. You think I'm just wearing a white T-shirt, but right?
You stand up. Don't move the camera. Okay. I can't quite see it. You have to tell me what it says.
Oh, it's the Beatles.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Oh, like so.
There you go. Fabulous.
Can you see?
Thank you. Yeah. Very
Just
good. Rather see your handsome face than yet another T-shirt, though. So our regular viewers will know that we have a little silly limerick to thank you for your time. So I will let Madam count it off, and we will count out today's show with Martin Orkin of rivalsofthebeatles.com, and we will thank him with our limerick, and we'll see you kids all of a sudden next week for TeaFlix, sponsored by Mrs. McCartney's Tea. Our vanilla chai is back in stock. Our new book, Twisted English, is out on Amazon. Shameless plugs. And you count the limerick, and here we go.
1, 2, 3.
So thank you for being our guest, with tales that are truly the best. With knowledge so vast, you've brought back the past, and told with such humor and zest.
Ta-da!
That is fabulous. Ladies, it's been wonderful spending time with you.
Thank you.
You're a wonderful pair, and I wish you all the best. And, if there's a chance of coming back again one day in a year or two's time, I'd love to do so. But
Once the new books are up and out and running, you bet. Have you back any day. You're a mine of information. Thank you, Martin. And thank you, Buzz Bazzini, for hooking us up.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
We'll see you kids all of a sudden.
Bye now.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to TeaFlix, and check out Dr. Angie's books, Organic Teas and CBD, at mrsmccartneysteas.com. Toodle pip!